Hello everyone, welcome back to Living Life Dial Style. I hope everybody's having a good day. We've got a video for you today about we're going to frame out this wall in the bunkie, and it's going to be a wall for the bathroom. And when I taped this video, I thought I had my microphone on, and the whole time I had it muted. So I'm going to do a voiceover on this and just explain everything to you as I was doing it. Now what I'm talking about right now is I've got two 2x4s laying down on the floor at my feet, and they go all the way across the floor. And then what I'm going to be showing you is I'm going to be laying out the marks for the studs on the 2x4s before I put them up on the wall. And also what I'm talking about here is normally I would lay a wall down on the floor, and I would cut all the 2x4s for it, and then I would put it together and then stand it up. But the reason I wasn't doing that on this is because I have plugs that are already installed, and initially I was thinking that I was going to have a wall from end to end, so when you try to stand it up, what it'll do is it'll hit the plugs and stuff. So now what I'm doing here is I'm laying out the studs at 16 inches on center. And on your tape measure, this is maybe redundancy for some folks, but for some folks may not know this. But on your tape measure, you've got a red mark every 16 inches, and that's for your stud length, or the distance from the wall, from stud to stud. So what I'm doing here is on the inside wall at 16 inches, I'm going to put a mark 3/4 inches behind that. And what that's going to end up doing is when I get out to 4 foot, if I have a 4-foot sheet of something that I put on the wall, that sheet will fall halfway on the center of the 4-foot stud. So what I'm doing is I'm going along here, and I'm putting a pencil mark at each stud, and then I'm drawing a little X out beside it, on which side of the line that I want to put my stud on. So we're going to go across here and mark this. Now what's going to happen is when I get over to this end, our door is going to be on this end that I'm on now. It's going to be a 30-inch door, and but I go ahead and mark the rafters out first anyway, as if there is no door. And then what I'm going to do is, right now I'm talking about the height of this wall. My door is 80 inches tall, so I'm going to need 80-inch worth of space, but this ceiling's only 78 or 79 inches tall. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to cut a door down and custom do a door to make it fit on this, because this is a storage building is what this is. So, this is basically showing you how to take a storage building and make something out of it, a room or a building, or, a living space. So what I'm doing is when I get to the end here, I'm gonna come back from the wall to my right, would be your left if you're looking at the video, obviously, and I'm going to determine where I want that far edge of the door, the first stud for the door. And what I do is, what I end up with on this is I end up just basically standing two 2x4s up on the end wall there for the door to mount to. And I do that to get the door off the wall enough so that it'll open and close okay, and plus so I can trim around it. So right now I'm using a square. See, I lay the top plate and the bottom plate down side by side. One of these is for the ceiling, one's for the floor, and I'm drawing a line on both of them. See, that way everything lines up, the top and bottom, once you get these lines done. And again, I'm putting those X marks where I know the stud needs to go. And if later on in the video, you'll see where I actually start to line a stud up on the opposite side of the line, but I catch it And even with the X marks, you still can mess up. So you just have to pay close attention when you're studding it out. Worst case scenario, if you put screws, you can just take the screw loose and move it over. And right here, see, I had to add pieces of wood to get all the way across because I didn't have long enough boards to go all the way with one piece of wood. But what I'm gonna come up with is the way it laid out. I'm basically gonna be able to just take these two boards out, and see, at that point I was already in the process of figuring I wasn't gonna be able to stand the wall up. So once that train got started, it was gonna be hard to stop it. But now that I'm looking at the video voiceovering, I could have went ahead and framed this wall out on the floor and stood it up, because I didn't, because I end up doing away with these two like 3-foot pieces of board. So now I'm measuring over on those boards that I don't need, basically 3 inches, because the studs are 1.5 inches. And you'll see me measuring one of the studs just to make sure. Even though I know that, I'm still checking to double check. But I'm going to find out in a minute once I figure out where this far side of the door goes. I have to pull a tape over to measure the opening. Now my door is 30 inches, but I need 3/4 inch worth of material to frame out on either side of the door. And so I add another quarter to that. So basically I'm framing the opening at 32 1/8, just to give me roughly 5/8 of an inch worth of play time I put my hinges on and get the door adjusted and everything. And also, one thing I talked about in this video is most time it's easier if you order a door from a box store or something like that. It already has the cased frame opening and everything on it, and all you have to do is basically put it in once you get your rough opening. But I'm using a door that I had left over from something that we did when we renovated the house. So basically it's just a door, no frame or nothing, and I'm going to make my own frame, hang my hinges on it and everything. So that's what I'm doing. And right here I find out that I'm going to have to basically take and cut like 1/2 inch off of these two boards, and that'll be perfect. So I'm going to end up basically doing away with the top boards, the top board and the bottom board right there. And you'll see me toss that board to the side. And now I'm sending my son out to cut the bottom plate down for me. And there I'm realizing that I would have ended up cutting like a 3-inch piece of wood for the end. And instead of doing that, I just ran solid 2x4s from the floor to the top, because I ended up not needing that. But that's all in the process of laying everything out. You figure that out as you go. The main thing is making sure that you get your studs marked right, and that you get all that straightened out. Now I'm going to go to the back of the building there where the bathroom's going to be, and I'm going to measure out. If you look at the glass block window there's a stud on the right of that, and I'm going to start the wall there because I want that glass block outside of the bathroom. And what I'm going to end up with is 42 inches on the inside of the bathroom. And I think that'll be perfect for a stand-up shower. And then I'll have a toilet and a vanity. And you don't need a great big bathroom, because the only thing you do in it is go and use the bathroom, or if you take a shower, but you don't hang out in there and watch TV and stuff like that. So, I'm minimizing the bathroom to try to gain as much space inside the building as possible. So I'm going to put a mark at 42 on each end so that I can line that board up, the stud up with. And then keep in mind too, the door we're walking in and out we are we're gonna do away with that door. We're gonna frame that in and cut that door off, because you won't need but one door on this building. This thing is so small anyway. So that door won't be there. And then my bathroom door is going to open in to the bathroom instead of out into the room, because I'll have that space behind the bathroom door right there. I'm just checking to make sure that that's exactly where I want everything. Now what I'm getting ready to do is, once I get that board on the floor lined up, I'm going to screw it down with some screws and get it set in place. Now somewhere along in this story here, I start talking about, after I trip over that, I start talking about that I had a guy come when we redid our house down here, that what this house is, that we have, is a Franken house, is what we call it. And it's one of these houses that's been added on to 2 or 3 times, and it's you've had multiple people working on it. And what happens when you get a situation like that is you get a lot of stuff that's off and out of level and stuff like that. And I had this contractor that I hired to finish up at the end for me, just a little bit of stuff. I just didn't have time to finish it up. And every time I turned around, the guy was calling me and sending me a picture of a level against something in the house. And I was telling him, I kept trying to tell the guy, you know what I'm saying? I said, man, look, I understand you want it level. I said, but when you're working with something that's not perfectly level, like a Franken house, you have to balance what's level and what looks good. And there's a lot of stuff in there. If you put a level on it, it's not going to be level. But we've kind of fudged the difference there to get the best look we can get. Now, luckily on this building here, this stuff's all square and pretty level, because they manufacture these and they're reasonably level. So we're screwing that board down now. But it was just funny about the guy. He just couldn't get that out of his mind, and the reason I'm telling you this story is, you've got to be willing to bend if you're working on a project if you're working on something that's already there and you're working with it and everything's not perfectly level. You have to have a mindset that you have to adjust and do things the best way you can to make it work out the best you can. Sometimes perfectly level on a job like that, it looks really crooked. So you just have to work with that. Like I said, again, this little project is not like that, but I said it just to let you know something like that. After this is, I'm going to hang the top stud. And see, luckily for me, what I'm looking at is I laid this bathroom wall out where it would fall on a stud on the wall and a stud on the ceiling, so that we would have something to screw everything to. Once I get my end screwed, I'm going to move down to where my son is, and I'm going to use my tape. I'm going to measure what I've got on that end, and I'm going to move down and line it up right there. And I should be in pretty good shape, because again, like I said, most of this stuff is square and level. I mean, you're talking about on the studs that we're getting ready to do, I think not every one of the studs is exactly the same, but we're within 1/4 of an inch. So I'll start out with 2 or 3 studs at one measurement, and then I go up a little bit on the measurement. So now I'm just screwing this up to the beam, getting it settled. But remember, I could have framed this out on the floor now, but at the time I had the train rolling and there was no stopping that train. Now I'm giving my son the measurement of the first stud that goes against the wall, and ultimately a couple of the next ones. And if you'll look up at the top of that stud where I'm measuring right there, you can see where that stud doesn't go all the way across. I could have made that go all the way across, and then I wouldn't have had to add a piece in there. But I'm going to come back later and add a piece in. Again, like I said, we're doing this on the fly. You know, our lives are super busy, and we're doing this in our spare time. So there's not a ton of planning. We have a vision in our head, so we kind of work it out as we go. You might want to, you know, maybe do some drawings and spend a little more time in a planning phase. But this is just the way we do it. We just fly from the hip. And it usually works out good for us. I'm having to tell my son at least 2 or 3 times here what the measurement is. And he wants to make sure he gets it right. And I'll tell you, it's good to have a 29-year-old son that still hangs out with his dad. So he's got my stud in. Right now I'm explaining what I was telling you earlier about how you can when you lay it down on the floor, you can screw your screws in from the end on each board. But see, now that I've got it up on the wall, it's not going to work that way. We're not going to be able to screw it that way. And what I'm going to do here in just a second is I'm going to have my wife bring the camera in, and I'm going to show you the way that I screw this, and probably everybody else when they do it. And again, for some of you guys, this may be redundancy. You may already know this, but this is just for folks that might be watching the video that are thinking about stepping out and trying something that they hadn't tried before. And coming up in this video, we are going to do some we are getting ready to do the foam spray on the walls. And what I'm probably going to do is when we do that, I may just tape it from the very beginning I've never sprayed it before, so you'll be watching me mess up probably. But it might be fun. But I'm going to have to get the electrical stuff straightened out first. This thing was wired when I got it already by somebody else. They had something already set up in it. So I'm going to have a lot of the stuff I'm going to have to redo and move around before we do that insulation. Because once I spray that foam, at that point I'm going to be getting ready to put some wall material up. It's going to be interesting doing the spray foam. I think it's going to work a lot better than the regular insulation. So here I'm fixing to put this first stud in. I'm going to have her move the camera over, and I'm going to show you what I call toenailing. And I think most other people in that does this calls it that. And remember, that process of marking the studs and putting the X now is coming into play, because now I don't have to think about it. I can just look at my line and make sure my stud is on the X mark. That way it's settled. And again, I apologize for the microphone. I really think this could have been one of my best videos with the microphone. I know in the past I've done videos that you can barely hear me. And we're trying to get everything straightened out, but we're new and we're just learning all this stuff. So she's fixing to bring the camera over now, and maybe you'll be able to see what I'm talking about here. Okay. Toenailing. I'm going to screw a nail in. I'm going to go in on an angle, and that's called toenailing. Like I said, normally if you do it on the floor, it's probably easier because you can just shoot the screws in from the bottom and from the top because it's laying down. But this is the way you do it if you have to do it without being able to do that. And there it is. You start that screw about 3/4 of an inch to an inch down, and you angle it up and shoot it in, and that's a toenail. Now we'll put the other boards in. And right here is probably where I'm talking about doing the foam insulation. And I was going to also mention too, when you cut these studs, if you're doing this like I'm doing it now, you want to make sure you take a good measurement, and you want that thing to be a little snug, because if it's loose, it's so hard to get it to toenail when the stud's loose. So you want to try to cut them snug. You don't want them too big, but you want them snug. Every now and then I'll have to tell my son to go back and shave a little bit, but I try to keep them snug so it's easy to get those toenails in. You can do it without it, but it's just a lot harder. Every now and then, as I'm doing this, when I do a toenail, some of the studs, every now and then a stud will crack a little bit. Not that big of a worry. It's going to be, it's going to be behind a wall. So, obviously you want to put your best foot forward, but it's going to happen. I mean, and the way lumber is nowadays, now you see right here, see how I've got that lined up? You can see that it's wider at the top than at the bottom. And I was almost going to line it up right there, and then I realized it, and I said, well, let me move it over. But even when you mark it, sometimes you can get it off. And I have had times where I've had to come back and move one. But usually if you'll look for that X, or make sure that X isn't showing, you'll be good. Now all these studs are going to be 16 inches on centers apart from each other. That way any type of material that you buy, any type of sheeting material is usually going to be in a 4 foot by 8 foot sheet, and stuff like that. And when you lay that up there, when you put that sheet up against the wall, against the corner, and you go over the 4 foot, that sheet's going to fall in the center, roughly in the center of that 4 foot rafter. And that's why you use the 16 inch. Or this building is framed out on 24 inch centers. You can kind of see that in the background. So they even put them farther apart, which is okay. You can do that. I mean, this is a 1-story structure. It's not going to be the end of the world. But I went 16 inches just because that's what we do normally, 16 inches. Now we're working on a deck where we're putting the Trex composite material down. Now I frame on that stuff every 12 inches because that stuff is, when it gets hot, it'll get flexible. And if you put it at every 12 inches, you won't have any of that. Now this might have been the stud that I was talking about. If you look at it, I think it was off a little bit. This is the one I was talking about. Yep, see, I'm moving it back over now. I had it over to the other side of the line. But like I was saying before, you have to frame based on, what kind of material you're going to be using and stuff like that. And again, I am a professional seamless gutter installer. That's what I do for a living. But I've done all this other stuff all my life. So I wouldn't necessarily call it professional, because I consider professional when you do it to make a living at it. Now this board right here is crooked, and I'll tell you something about that in a minute, because this video is fixing to cut off. We had a battery issue. I'll tell you on the next clip. Sometimes you get that. The boards will be warped. Okay, right here I've screwed a board to the side of the stud because the stud's crooked, and I'm using the board to pull the stud over to straighten it out, and then I'm screwing it up there. That way I can try to straighten a crooked stud. And they don't have to be absolutely perfect. You are going to put a wall over it, and it is wood, so you do have to deal with, the imperfections of wood, even though they're supposed to be cut pretty close. Now here I have a short stud. He cut this one. This one's a little loose, so I might have to have my son help me to hold this while I toenail the screws. Because that's why I said you want your boards snug if you can get them that way. Okay, right here I'm measuring for the two studs that I'm going to put against the wall here, which again, like I said before, will set my door out 3 inches off of the wall. That way I have room to install my 1x6 rough sawn boards on the wall, and then I still have room to be able to trim everything out. So that's why I'm bringing it out that far on the edge. And the door will open in, and I'm talking about right here where we are going to do away with that door. We're going to stud that in and put the T111 siding on the end of it, because we don't need but one door. And I cannot remember what I was saying right here. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna put that board up, and then you're gonna see me get a 2x4. And what I'll do is I'll take that 2x4 and put it down on the floor alongside the other wall and let it extend over, so that I can have that, make sure that stud is parallel with or even with the wall. And I did check the 2x4, it's pretty straight. See, I'll hold it against the bottom of that wall, and then that way I can just tap my stud one way or the other, and then that way I know we're good to go as far as it being even with the other wall, so that it doesn't affect the door. See me checking it? I repeat the top there, make sure that it's in line again with the wall. Now we're going to screw it down. Here comes my son with the next 2x4. We'll screw that on top. Oh, right here I'm talking about this is a piece of wood that's kind of messed up on one side, which you'll find this a lot with lumber nowadays. And I'm just talking about how it's not the end of the world. I'm just going to turn that messed up side in to the wall, and it's not going to affect anything as far as, the wood not being perfect right there, because that imperfect side's going to be facing in. Again, like I said, nowadays the lumber is just terrible. You try to pick through it and get your best stuff, but it's just nothing like it used to be. Everything's so expensive too. I used to enjoy going to the lumber store for a weekend project, but now I have to bite my tongue. Things are so expensive. So what I'm going to do now up top is I'm going to add that 2x4 back that I had originally cut out. And what I'll do is after I add that one, I'm going to probably put a second one in to bring the door frame down enough so that I can finish out the ceiling with the material and then still have room to put some trim around the door. And again, I think I've already mentioned this, but I'm dealing with a... Okay, guys, we're back. We had a storage issue on the phone. We're going to get all that worked out eventually. I hate to keep talking about it, but it is what it is. And this whole video, I had my mic muted or muted, however you say it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a voiceover, but this is the very end of the video right here. What I was doing is I was showing that right here at the end, I didn't have a 2x4 up right here at the top of the door. And what I was saying is I added the 2x4 because then I'm still going to have to put a 1x on that to frame out for the door, because I want the door low enough that when it opens and closes that it's not going to hit my finished product right up here on the bottom of this. So anyway, that should pretty much wrap this video up. And what I'll do is at the first of the video, you're going to see me talking and everything, and I'm just going to voice over. I'm going to explain everything that I explained while I was doing this. And thanks again, guys, for watching the channel. Work with me and give me some time, and I'll get everything squared away, and we'll try to put out some good videos. And here, I wanted to say this before I stop. If you watch these videos and you have a desire to see something, that you want something taped, or you want me to try to film something that I do a lot of different stuff. So put on the comment and say, hey, I'd like to see you make a video on this. And if I can do it, I will. And if I can't, I'll tell you, I can't make one on that, but I can do a lot of stuff. So maybe there's something you want to see that I'm not showing you. If that's the case, do that. Hey, and by the way, like the video if you would, or hit the dislike if you'd like, and subscribe. Costs you nothing. It's free. Bye-bye from Living Life Dial Style.